Welcome to Beyond the Coverage, brought to you by Moss Adams. I'm Chris Horner, and this is the second rest day of the 2021 Tour de France. I want to go back to yesterday's stage 15 and break down some of the tactics we saw. In the comments yesterday, a lot of people could not understand why FDJ were riding. Now, when you have a group of 32 riders like we saw in yesterday's stage 15, you know the chemistry is never going to gel. And the reason it won't gel is because you have pure climbers, you have hybrid guys like Wout van Aert and Thomas de Gendt back there, and then you have a lot of guys who can't climb at all but made the breakaway because it was early in the stage. With about 140 kilometers to go, that group of 32 splits in half, and FDJ is on the back pulling it back together. That tactic's pretty easy to understand. They missed the front group, now they pulled it back. What actually got a lot of people upset is Francis de Jure. After they bring the group of 32 back together, they just started riding the rest of the stage until we get into the mountains proper. Now I want to explain their tactic because some people left in the comments, it's Jumbo-Visma's job to pull all the way to the climb. They have the best riders in the race. They do have the best riders in this group of 32. The problem is they have 3 of the best riders in this group of 32. So the problem's not for Jumbo-Visma, it's for everybody else, and certainly for FDJ. When you have 3 of the strongest riders in that group and they can all climb, the group's 32, if the attacks start happening, Wout van Aert can cover multiple attacks, Sepp Kuss can cover 1 or 2 of the attacks, and Steven Kruijswijk can fit in between there and cover 3 or 4 himself. So they're always going to have the favorite in the front group. FDJ's Marc Matteo knows this. He's been racing for a long time, so he's got a dilemma on his hands. He has 3 guys in the front group, but only one of them can really climb if they want any chance at winning stage 15 of the Tour de France. Bruno Armorai and Valentin Manoir from FDJ rode fantastic through the flat stages to get David Gaudu to the beginning of the climbs. It was always going to be a Hail Mary tactic, but when you're left with those 3 riders in a group of 32 with this much talent, it was the only tactic left for Marc Matteo to use on stage 15. In my opinion, it was fantastic. It was a great tactic, and it gave David Gaudu some kind of a chance to win stage 15. Had they not ridden, they would have attacked them nonstop. FDJ probably would have missed the move with David Gaudu. Worse yet, missed it with all 3, with quality riders up ahead starting the climb, and David Gaudu starting the last climb minutes behind. Instead, on stage 15, he's in with a chance on the last climb, but just doesn't have the legs. Now, let's move forward because Tadej Pogačar has a commanding lead at this year's Tour de France with over 5 minutes on everybody on the general classification. Yesterday, he was fabulous on the final climb. Now we have 3 more big stages coming up. Tomorrow's stage 16, I find a little bit intriguing because after they go over all the climbs, they'll drop down the last climb, and it's a 20-kilometer flat section to the finish. Now, if tomorrow's stage goes anything like yesterday's stage, we could see Tadej Pogačar isolated for the last 20 kilometers. Now, it's longer than 20 kilometers when you talk from the summit to the finish, but going down the summit, it'll be hard for him to lose too much time there. But when you get to the bottom, if he's with a group of, say, 10 riders, 5 riders even, it's hard for one guy when the road comes flat. Remember, when the climbs come down and it becomes level, the rider's fitness come up, the flatter it gets, and as the hill drops and more flat roads arrive, everybody's level becomes a little bit more even. Tadej Pogačar is still incredibly strong on the flats, there's no doubt about it. But when you're following 4 or 5 attacks on the flats, it's not going to happen the same way or look the same way as it did on yesterday's final climb. When attacks are happening on the climbs, there's not much draft there, so there's not a lot of wind, and things happen in slow motion because the speeds are 15 kilometers an hour, 20 kilometers an hour. When we get on the flats, they could be 50 kilometers an hour, and if a guy attacks from the back and there's hesitation, they slow down. A 50 kilometer an hour attack with hesitation back there will cause a split instantly, and now we got a good race. So tomorrow's stage, the last 20 kilometer, pay attention to that because it could be really exciting with Tadej Pogačar isolated, fighting amongst 4, 5, maybe 10 guys in the front group instead of yesterday on the final climb. 2 stages that follow after that, they got some drama too because now you're talking about a long flat section followed by a bunch of hills. If we're really lucky, we get some massive crosswinds on those stages, and that could be exciting because now we can watch teams try to isolate Tadej Pogačar on the flats and then go into the climbs. I like stage 18 the most because it's a 70 kilometer flat section to begin with, and then we're going to go into 2 massive big climbs with a summit finish. What I specifically like is the flat section could be dangerous, and then when we hit the first climb, Jumbo-Visma can use Wout van Aert's talents. At this point in time, Wout van Aert's been racing for stages, yellow jerseys in the first week of the Tour de France, but now I think we're going to see Jumbo-Visma really switch back and start helping their race leader, Jonas Vingegaard, try to win this year's Tour de France, or at least gain some time to secure a second on the podium position. When the first climb starts, I'd love to see Wout van Aert just hit that first climb on the last mountain stage. So we're talking about stage 18, last mountain stage of this year's Tour de France. Just have Wout van Aert light it up at the bottom of that first climb and then see what happens. He's one of the few riders that really has the power to go so hard at the first climb and then just disintegrate the whole field behind and have Tadej Pogačar isolated. I gotta believe Sepp Kuss will still be there. Steven Kruijswijk may be there, but Ineos guys could have 3 or 4, and then they can keep the pace fast after Wout van Aert pulls off, after he's disintegrated the group behind. So really pay attention to stage 18. I think it could be exciting. Tomorrow's stage, the last 20 kilometers, that's really intriguing to me to see what will happen. Before I go, you may have noticed the Butterfly Effect special edition yellow jersey that we had made up. We're going to have some merchandise for sale. I'll put a link in there. We do the jersey in red and, of course, the special edition in yellow. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show, and I'll see you real soon back on the Butterfly Effect for tomorrow's Stage 16 of the Tour de France.